Greetings, everyone. I am very excited today to be interviewing Kate Atwood, and I'll tell you about a little bit about her in a minute. But I want to say that this is a part of my series of interviewing people that I see as cutting edge creators, innovators, pioneers, guiding us into the Aquarian paradigms. And the first time I talked with you, Kate, that was exactly what I felt about you. And just to give a little bit of your bio, but again, as you were just saying before we got on the video, what's extraordinary about you is your way of being, not all the things that you've done. And that's part of what I want to talk with you about is your journey and how you're dealing with this time of transition and transformation. But in terms of some of what you have done, you're currently co-founder, CEO at LoCo Plus, and we'll talk a lot about that. You've been the executive director of ChooseATL in Atlanta, founder of Kate's Club, which is extraordinary. We have to talk about that. You're a speaker, author, and again, incredible innovator and pioneer. And part of what I'd love to include as we talk about your journey is how my sense of you is when you've hit times of crisis or times of transition, you step forward with your creativity and have a passion for community. But tell us a little bit about your journey and how that's played out.
And I do just want to start with immense gratitude to you, Heather, for having me. I will never forget when you've been a big part of my transformation and healing over the past year. Although, it was you putting your content out and me connecting to your content. And on a whim, one day I emailed you from your website, and I mean, people are busy, you don't really have, expectation of response. And your response just took my whole body and spirit, like, whew. I mean, just the response that came right back. And that, of course, began this conversation. And I'm just really honored to be able to share this time with you and hopefully shed light on just, my own journey and what I've been going through, but also to your point, what I've done. My journey really does start with the, that, sacred wound that's in all of our fairy tales and all of our myths and, the death of the mother. My mom died when I was 12 years old. And it most certainly put me on a trajectory in life that was not what I anticipated. I often say, when somebody close to you dies, especially when you're young, you don't ever think of the day that they're not going to be there. And so when I was 12 years old and that disconnect from mother happened in a human, tangible, profound way, it just set me on a course in life where I really became, first and foremost, the seeker. And second, I just became very aware that there's something here. And by that, I don't mean to be abstract or anything, but what are we doing here? What are we doing here? So that, that was a big part of my journey. I was 12 years old, adolescence, and I think I set out. And the first thing I noticed, and this will be a theme in our conversation today, was something was wrong at a system level. I know that's, I didn't have those words when I was 12 years old, but I definitely had a feeling when I was 12 years old that at a system cultural level, growing up in America, middle-class family, still something wasn't right with what I was going through. And that's when I became super curious about grief and the culture of grief. But of course, I had to keep it inside. I had to kind of walk this path of adolescence, questioning that, but not having any environment or safe space to really explore it or to talk about it. I kind of joke, with therapy in kids, therapy is a great great thing. And, I have no judgment. I've certainly participated in a bunch of different therapeutic modalities. But for kids, the psychology that's formed around it is othering. It is the separation, the big disconnect. And I didn't understand that, that was really when I first walked feeling othered, and feeling that disconnect. So I can go into, yeah, go ahead.
If I can just inject something there, Kate. I mean, I think part of what you're talking about, when you experience an intense traumatic experience, like the loss of your mother as a 12-year-old, from all that I know with my background in trauma, if we're held in relationship, if we're seen and heard and supported, then we don't get caught in long-term PTSD. But part of what you're describing is being a 12-year-old and not feeling that sense of connection, community, support, being held and heard. So you hold it inside, and then it leads to this whole existential crisis about what is going on in this world.
Yeah. And, my life is one where the wisdom may seem like it came early, but it actually came after. Oftentimes I'm like the real-time alchemist. I've been the wounded healer. I've, been the creative visionary. I've, in a lot of ways had this mythic life and this mythic career. But I'll tell you, I didn't have that healing early in my life. I just somehow was very protected. Now I know why and how. And I was always on the path that even if I didn't want to see it, it was going to hit me in the face, if that makes sense. And I think that next turn for me came when I was 19 years old. I was in college and very much thinking about adulthood. And I always enjoyed working with kids. A lot of that came from my mother. She was an educator. And so I signed up to volunteer at this camp. Now, I'll be honest, I signed up for resume reasons. It wasn't, this really like charitable, I need to go do this, for that. But I ended up volunteering at this camp that was for kids, for bereaved children. And I'd never heard of anything. And it had been 7 years since my mother had passed away. And I was so curious. I was like, camp for bereaved children? This is, I have to see what this is. And so I showed up at the camp, and the camp director immediately asked me to open camp with my story, because I was the youngest volunteer there who had had a loss. Now, this is an important part of my story because I had not talked about my mom in 7 years.
Wow.
Especially in the Western world, like it is tangibly, emotionally, spiritually, everything is repressed when it comes to loss and grief. And that, I think, is a big theme that is really at the forefront right now. If we're going to get through this change and this transformation, we really have to heal our relationship with loss and with grief. And I know we've shared that.
Beautiful insight. Yes.
So I got this really incredible moment to stand on, in front of 200 young people and share my story without thinking, without scripting. And I, to this day, remember the sense of freedom that came over me in that expression and just sharing. My name is Kate. My mother died. I'm not sure how long I talked or what I even said, but I do remember that feeling. And later that evening, when I was kind of in this, whole space in my head, like, I'm awesome. I just got up and shared my story, which is the first release. I had a young girl who was 12 years old. She happened to be the same age I was when my mom had passed away. And she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "You're Kate." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, I lost my mom and my dad, and they died in a car accident." And even at 19 years old, what so struck me about that exchange was how familiar she was with me. With and I don't mean in the cosmic sense. I mean in the, she felt safe. She felt quite open and quite all right and not othered. And she wanted to share her story with me because of that exchange. And that was really the moment that changed my life, because I got my why. You know, a question that a lot of people ask when they have hardship and trauma and grief is why, you know, the questions around victim and why me, and that's a very normal thing, you know, a very normal reaction to grief. But when I got my why right in my face, that it wasn't about me, it was about her and the connection that this event, this experience could bring to my life. That was really the impetus to go on and build Kate's Club, and to, you know, get into that next level of my journey. So I'm very grateful for that moment, because like I said, I didn't seek it out, but it came, and it changed everything for me.
Well, and what's so profound about that, Kate, is your awareness in the moment of how profoundly healing that kind of connection and empathy can be in the midst of loss, in the midst of grief, to be there with and for each other.
Yes, at the time I was like, this is it. Like, I just cracked the code. This is everything. I felt so much bliss around something that had carried so much sadness and difficulty in my life. I felt that bliss. I was like, this is it. And I remember telling my dad, my father, I was like, I need more of that. You know, it was kind of like, this is the juice. I need more of that.
Because another facet of it I'm hearing is the incredible exhilaration of authenticity. We can actually be real and talk about what we feel and be there for each other with it.
Yeah, and I think the power of knowing that we have a role for the next generation. You know, one of the things that I think gets lost sometimes in everything that's going on right now and how fast it's going on is what will be that thing that brings us together. Because the past things that have manufactured unity, we know are no longer it. War and religion, you know, and those have played its course. And I think one of the things that I felt really driven around and sharing my story is there are things out there that can bring us together that don't put us against each other,
yes,
that give us that still allow us to have a shared vision and a North Star, that allow us to have individuation and purpose and unique, you know, expression, and be in collaboration and community with each other. And I have gotten so passionate about that. And I kind of do like the irony that my platform is around grief. It is the thing that people least suspect, right? But grief is the ultimate unifier. I mean, it is the one thing that connects us all. Just like birth and creation, death and grief are that same paradox. They exist in that same paradox, but we need, like everything, we need to stop seeing them as different. They are the same. One of the things I say to the kids all the time is, you know, hold your grief like it's a trophy. You know, grief at its core is love. Like, you are feeling what you're feeling because you loved somebody so much. And that is to be celebrated. That is a trophy. And they love that, you know, because they love trophies.
Well, what's really
as adults, I think even as adults, yeah.
Yeah. And what's profound about that, Kate, is, you know, it's interesting. I know you understand what's going on astrologically, and Pluto's in the final degrees of Capricorn, and Pluto is the planet of death, rebirth. deep transformation. And part of what you're saying is if we're afraid of death and grief, we're unable to fully live our lives. That part of the wisdom of Pluto is that we go through experiences of loss, of grief, of death, and it brings us into transformation and a rebirth of a new way of being. But if we're afraid and we resist going through those experiences of loss, then we don't actually grow and evolve and move into the new ways of being. And that's very much a part of the process we're in collectively right now, is letting go of the ways of the past and what gave us a sense of identity and security to move into a radically new way of being. But you have to grieve and let go of what you've been attached to move into the new forms.
Yes, and I love that you have, even helped to open up grief to being, it doesn't just have to be the physical death of somebody. Grief is change that we aren't in control of. It's loss of job. It can come in various ways. Kate's Club is an organization for children and teens who have lost by death a parent or a sibling or a caregiver. But I'll tell you, it's so interesting astrologically because, Kate's Club is 20 years old. So I went on to build Kate's Club. I'm maybe getting a little bit out of step. And that has wild stories, maybe a whole nother interview. But very grassroots. I, wanted to build a place for children to come together in community to heal. And I knew if I could just create the environment, the kids would do the work.
Beautiful.
And yes, and I'll never forget. When I tell you, I was 22 years old. I didn't have a degree. There was no academic, credential that I had. I wasn't even a licensed therapist. Some people kind of look at that back and they were like, you were really protected. And I, no doubt, like I was surrounded and held. But part of the beauty of it was that it was grassroots, that it was a group of young people who had shared in this experience. Because of course, once I started talking about my vision, it was young people. It was 20 somethings who didn't have a lot of money, but they had a lot of passion. And we, raised $1,200. So this is for all of your, your audience and your community who is thinking that they need so much to start something. You don't. You really, really don't. It was $1,200. And we just started to meet the families and bring them together. And we started with going bowling, going hiking, it was very, very simple. But it brought me to a huge lesson that I would love to share about, navigating change. And especially for somebody, I know you've done this most of your life in leading people through change. And one of the things that I have just kind of come into my own with that just kind of clicked in these early days of Kate's Club was that you have to be very sensitive to meet people where they're at. And I think as we're this group of, awakened individuals going through this journey together right now, to remember that is to remember to be sensitive to the people who aren't awake yet, or who may seem to hold very different viewpoints or energy frequencies. Is, you really meet people where they're at, and then you can begin to understand how to move them forward. And I'll never forget one of the first families that I met. It was 3 young girls, and their father had passed away. And, I was, 20, going on 23, and I walked in to meet the family. And I would walk in with like my resume and, my, people that would what are they called when you have a resource, or, call somebody to make sure that I'm legit.
Your references.
My references. And the young girl looked, and I overheard her. She looked at her older sister and she said, "She doesn't look like what I thought she'd look like." And I was, young and, I just quipped back like, well, what did you think I was going to look like? And she said, I thought you would be old and wearing black. And it was such a profound moment because that was her perception of death and of grief. And I knew at that minute this was going to be a boulder up a mountain. I knew that we were going against the grain of a culture that had a set perception of what grief and healing grief and coming into community. Indigenous tribal cultures are, they're so much better at this. But the Western, modern culture is like, nope, didn't happen, push it on the rug, don't talk to anybody, it's not to go outside the house. It's like, it's
override
so
it.
toxic. Yeah, it's so toxic.
Yeah.
And I knew at that moment when she said that, I kind of giggled to myself and I was like, oh, this isn't what you think this is going to be, and, and that was a theme. Kids resisted coming to Kate's Club. They resisted. And I get it. And I would always just say, just try it once. You can go home in the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but without a doubt. And to this day, we still see this happen. Kids don't want to leave. They are so connected to the experience of being in community and of healing. It inspires me. It's really amazing to watch. And I'll just add that the other observation is how diverse this group of kids are. That there is no faith, socioeconomic boundary, racial boundary. These kids come from all corners, all zip codes of our service area. And they don't bring any of that muck with them. It's such a beautiful vision into what unity can look like.
And
that, yeah.
They're
And
not overriding the diversity. They're just coming together and accepting each other in the diversity of who they are in this shared experience together.
In the shared experience. And yeah, it's really, I feel so, it is one of the greatest blessings of my life is that I get to watch this incredible organization, incredible community just continue to grow. And it was a hard push for about 18 years. This was, again, grief. As much as we were out there talking about it and getting people excited, it's just one of those things that people don't want to touch it, unless they're like, right, it affects them directly. And then COVID happened. And COVID, just definitely Pluto, Capricorn, it put it front and center. And Kate's Club during COVID and now after COVID, it just exponentially has taken on a bigger role in our society, from just growth of our services. We have Clubhouse services, which is, where we bring kids together. We're now advising state and federal governments on policy around bringing bereavement into mental health policy. Finally.
Beautiful.
And also I will share piloting our newest program, which I'm super excited about, is piloting a program with the Fulton County, which is a county in the state of Georgia, juvenile court system. Because one of the things that the research has shown is that 9 out of 10 kids in the juvenile justice system have experienced the death of at least one parent or caregiver.
Wow. That is extraordinary.
And nobody's asked. Nobody is asked. And so we're super excited. Our team will go in and they will hold groups with these young people. And I'll share in full transparency, we were hoping to start this program earlier, but when we began the work with the court system, we realized the first step was we had to work with the people who were working with the kids. And that's, part of this kind of undoing and redoing is we have generations, cycles and cycles of unresolved grief that we have to try to, get up to speed and to transform. And then we have these younger generations that are ready to go, they're ready to go on this journey. And I know that's something that you've talked about is, they're coming in with some of that.
But also, Kate, you're talking about the interface between the system and structure that's established its way of being, like particularly in the prison system, the legal system. And everything that you've done with Kate's Club is grassroots, not
Grassroots.
Experts coming in top down, setting up a program. It's community-based, it's grassroots, it's let's bond together over how we heal together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extraordinary.
And I, that's the theme that has in everything that I've built, I think from Kate's Club, I think the other thing to share is that the wounded healer in me, that, in my 20s, I reached that point where I realized my output was greater than my input. And so I was leading Kate's Club, and it was everything in my life. I mean, once you get that, that juice, you're like, but I was young and I wasn't fully evolved, and I didn't have healthy boundaries, and I hadn't dealt with a lot of my own stuff. And I think that was beautiful because it allowed me to be present with the kids in a very natural and authentic way versus wisdom over this is the path. This is, I was just I really had an authentic approach to letting them be a part of the vision of the manifest. It did reach a point where I crashed. And, that in itself is a whole grief experience of, being able to let something go. I don't have children of my own, but to be a part of building something up that was so close to my life and, my wound, but then to really, really realize and to get that message that, one, this is bigger than you, so don't hold it back. And two, now you need to learn to be in harmony with your grief, not just driven by it.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah. And that's kind
honor
of what
you need in your own healing journey, as opposed to focusing all your energy to be a healer to others.
Yeah. And I realized at that time that was very common. That's what a lot of people do. My expression was maybe a little bit different than becoming a nurse or a therapist, but I felt somewhat normalized in, okay, I think this kind of, happens. And so I need to go away from it. So that was kind of another time of just where presence really led me, not in a peaceful, easy way, right?
Not exactly a gentle way, but
not in a gentle way, but in a way that I knew. And I think the voice that's always brought me comfort in times like that is, this is always for something else. This is always for something bigger to come in. And that's probably the creative alchemy that you were talking about. I think a lot of people want to know what that is before they go through the hardship and the darkness. We want the certainty, we want the control. But for me, that guide who's been saying, you don't know it yet, but it's on purpose, and it's for your growth, for your evolution. Yeah.
What's extraordinary about that, Kate, is, the journey with Pluto, and ancient cultures understood this in terms of the rites of passage. We have to be in the grief and the letting go, the letting whatever it is be dying. And then we go into a liminal period of not knowing. We've let go of our identity as we knew it. Now you're in the mystery. That's where the healing and transformation happens. mean, that's the caterpillar going into the chrysalis and feeling like, okay, I just dissolved. I no longer have any form. I'm clueless what's next. But that liminal time is what allows us to move into the new identity, new form, and for you, completely new chapter in your life.
Yeah. And I have to giggle sometimes because was no, to this day, why I use the word Kate's Club. I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't like I needed my name in lights, that really, it was, I named the organization Kate's Club because I saw that a lot of organizations that were working with these kids were named after the person who had died, and why that was honorable and wonderful. I wanted what this community to represent was the life that still was living, that was growing, that was going on. And so it was very, young and naive, but I called it, Kate's Club. And, as that cycle was kind of ending and I was having to detach from it, I had to kind of giggle because I was like, well, this is a heck of a way to detach from identity. Like, it's my name. It's, it's my story. Where do I go from here? Please, so it, that was its own journey. And to, for me to really understand that, that I had to detach fully from even that part of my story. There was going to be another part of the story. So I share that.
So
I didn't want this brand that had Kate's everywhere.
But it was another loss. It was truly another letting go.
It really, really was. And that was a hard time. That was, right around 29, 30.
Around your Saturn return.
Around my Saturn return. There we go. And I had no idea. I mean, everything was going through my mind was like, was that just luck? What am I supposed to do? How do I follow that? And it was, basically the pendulum swing back to who are you without the doing. That was the big change for me, in my 30s. And I would go on a path of that for the next several years, which, according to my resume may, not seem like it was the most creative or, biggest, time, but it actually really was. It was what I was doing post Kate's Club. You mentioned ChooseATL. I got an incredible opportunity to rebuild the Arby's Foundation, which Arby's is the restaurant group, and do impact that wasn't attached to my name. It was very, it was under the radar, but it was big impact. It was major paradigm shifts that nobody was expecting from fast food restaurant. And then that's, of course, what led me to ChooseATL and the work I did for Atlanta.
What's beautiful to hear too, Kate, is you needed time to explore yourself, your gifts, your life. I mean, if you think about it, so much of your life up until that point had been defined by the grief. And then what you did with your grief, how you helped others in their grief. But it sounds like you really let yourself be in this exploration then of who am I if I'm in my life, in my exploration of my gifts.
Yeah. And it got really interesting because I think I also realized in crossing that chasm with my own grief and with Kate's Club, I still felt very unique. Like I still felt very, I hate to use the word outsider, but I could no longer kind of rely on that crutch. I was like, this is just, really some weird stuff. Like, who am I in this world? So I think my soul has always been that. My human self has always tried to attach it to something. That's what we do, right? Like to a life experience or to a job. But what I found, and I hope this helps somebody, was that feeling of remembering who I was, that journey of remembering who I was, that curiosity of what this all is, and just being a student of this particular lifetime, it never did go away. So that I think too was always kind of a motivator, to get, to get on to the next, or to see what I could do, because I've been really gifted with the knowing of it's really not about me. It's all about me, but it's not at all about me. And that plays out in its own unique way for sure. But a lot of what I do, a lot of what I've created has come from that. It's come from that grounding.
What's beautiful about that, Kate, is, and you and I have talked about this in terms of looking at the birth chart and the meaning of that. But if you really think about it, it's like we are guided by that soul self part of us that holds that larger sense of the vision and what we're here, how we're here to learn and grow and evolve. But the personality self, the human in this incarnation, is constantly trying to figure it out and trying to interface with the current culture, with all the external expectations. But I really hear how throughout your journey, you've listened to that inner knowing and that inner guidance and that nudging of your soul self. This is the next step. Even in the midst of the human personality part of you, often not having a clue, okay, what's going on? What's next? Where am I headed? But
Yeah.
you trust that inner guidance.
Yeah. And trust doesn't necessarily come easily. I think that's the other thing too, is, I have my sun in Leo, my moon and rising sun in Cancer. I mean, talk about the ultimate duality. It's like, oh, charge forward. Wait, I just want to cry. Like I'm, and
Get
so,
me home.
Yes. And I think that just sharing openly, I think with you is that trust has, because I've felt so driven by these visions. I feel I get these, I see these ways of being, these systems in my mind. I imagine it's like what an artist sees, when they see a finished painting before they painted it. That's what I see. I see systems being, in new form. A lot of it's kind of the Trinity model, right? I mean, that's a lot of, and then my journey is breaking that down such that then I can be a translator to bring it out into the world. But that takes a lot of energy,
Yes. And a lot of courage.
And discernment. And, I think as an empath, especially in the construct of, top down and the way that business works right now and the way that financial systems work right now, like none of that has really ever resonated with me, but I've known that I have to work with it. I've got to somehow, navigate those systems until, they aren't the systems anymore. So leadership, I'm a very diplomatic leader. I may carry the role of CEO, but I really am not comfortable with that role of CEO. I like leading by committee. I like giving power, distributing power across the board. I think that's why I do really well with volunteers because, when I talk to young people who are looking to be CEOs and leaders and founders, I say the great thing about starting in the nonprofit space and learning leadership through service and volunteering is you learn how to motivate people without a paycheck. And if you can get people to move and to be of service and to be a part of what you're building without the paycheck, that's when you really know that what you're building is of bigger, of importance. That is really the link in the chain around, I humbly believe, with purpose. And so, I try to take those lessons in everything that I build, in terms of community and collaboration. And that's why I'm excited about the Aquarian Age, because I'm like, yes,
finally, it's catching up to where you've always been. But I think,
Totally.
you're an incredible bridge person because you've been sensing this, and truly, that's part of why I was so excited to do this interview with you, Kate, because you have intrinsically been living those paradigms your whole life about community, collaboration, creativity. How are we in this together in the midst of our diversity? How do we step out of the power over paradigm? How do we step out of the polarization? So talk some about what you're doing now, because I think it's so exciting and so tied in with all of these values that you've held throughout your whole life.
Yeah. So most recently, I'll talk a little bit about what I was doing for Atlanta. I'll give the quick version because that was an amazing opportunity. I was tapped by the Metro Atlanta Chamber in Atlanta, Georgia, to build this new economic development initiative around millennials. And this was when millennials were really moving for the first time into the workforce. And like everything, their trajectory shifted a lot of paradigms. And when they were, began to enter the workforce, they completely shifted economic development. Cities had been built for thousands of years on industry. Industry was what they sold themselves on, right? Automobile, you would go to Detroit, manufacturing, maybe Atlanta, finance. I mean, you can think about it. I mean, all city identity around the world was built on industry. Well, millennials changed all of that because the digital revolution allowed for jobs in any industry to be in any city. So it really put a lot of these cities, on guard with having to make sure, because economic viability relies on having people live in your zip code and have jobs and build jobs and grow jobs. And I never saw myself in economic development, but my gosh, what a fascinating field. Fascinating, especially when you're somebody who sees things at a systems level. So I understood why I was there. But in that work, and it was a fantastic job, we were able to shift, how Atlanta was telling its story from, if you know anything about Atlanta, Georgia, you know that it's mostly known for Coca-Cola and the airport, all these like very industrial things. But Atlanta is incredibly diverse. Atlanta is a music, just mecca. It is in a lot of ways the birthplace of hip hop, and the cultural reverence for Atlanta and the South and civil rights. I mean, it's got great story, but those were all things that the typical economic development kind of government leader was like, we can't have those in our bullet points. And I kind of went in there and was like, no, you absolutely need to have those as your top talking points, because this is what young people want. It's what makes you unique, and it's what young people want. I really feel like people have given the younger generations a bad rap in that with social media, they just want to be globally connected everywhere. They are so thirsty for community. They are so hungry for place-based value and belonging. And we've kind of bought into this narrative by these, big companies, by the way, around, well, local doesn't matter, place doesn't matter. And the biggest learning that I had from this experience with ChooseATL was local is everything. It's identity. That where young people, in the younger era choose to live, it's not made by a job. It's made by where do I feel I fit in. It's very tribal. Right? Even if it's discovery, it is very tribal in intuition and nature. And so that's what I wanted to do with ChooseATL. Instead of trying to get people to choose Atlanta because of jobs, I took the community that had already chosen Atlanta and I made them I really made them the ambassadors, them the marketer. I kind of flipped it on its head a little bit and was like, this is how we'll get people to, we'll build a viable community, is by focusing on the community that's It's already chosen us, if that makes sense.
Well, part of what's beautiful about that, and that's a theme that's carried over into your current work, that
Right.
sense of how important location is and connection to that local culture. But I would also add to that, I feel like some of the indigenous wisdom we're needing to come back to is how to have connection to that local geography and that land where we are too.
Yes.
I mean, one of my running
Yes.
jokes is that my longest term relationship is with the land where I live.
Land.
And that is such a deep, integral part of my identity and who I am and my deep connection with this land. So I feel like you're really tapping into that and how crucial that is for community, connection, and identity.
Yes. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I'd love to, I know I've shared a lot, but I would love to share about LoCo Plus, because it is my, is really, really my passion right now. From working with young people, realized how much of a disservice it was that we had kind of taken a media construct and just sucked out all the value of having local, rather than seeing it as a need to evolve, like everything else. And so, 20 years in from social media and YouTube, we have, a media system that is so universal and so distant that the system is really no longer productive, for creators, for audiences, even for advertisers. I mean, it's going through a major shift. And when I was meeting with young people in Atlanta, and they were asking for it, they wanted some form of medium to be able to consume the creative expression, the content, the music that was made around them, that was made in proximity. That was really what put me on the trajectory of building LoCo Plus. And LoCo Plus is is really the first distribution platform for independent content creators that uses geography as a curation, as a way to, really bring this, kind of this expression of content creation, the audiences and the people that are receiving it, and then as well as the businesses, who play a role in the local economy. And wow, it's been incredible. Again, this is a situation where I can see it in my head. The future media system, it will be independent, it will be decentralized, and it will be localized. I think the biggest thing that people have to wrap their head around is the old construct of local that was formed around limits, right? Technology limited.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah, it limited, what that was valued as local, because it was based on, just how far the broadcast could reach. And it's not that local. The new local is not that. It's actually not limited at all. It's really about origin. It's really about origin of place, source of creativity,
And
but
honoring diversity.
And honoring diversity. And the decentralization is, not that it will be this wild, wild west. It will be centralized, obviously, on LoCo Plus, but the relationship and the contact between the creator who's expressing and putting out their short film or their music video, or their different videos, there's no middleman in between that. There's, this will start to shape the financial systems, right? So this is where technology gets really exciting. The opportunity around AI and blockchain. It is about, building these systems to be equitable. And I think we put a lot of attention on climate and labor and, economic and political, and they're all changing, and, they're important as well. But media, the media system is such a cog in the wheel that we don't pay attention to enough. And ironically, it's the one we have the most power over as people. It
Yes,
really,
I mean, I'm
it
so
really
excited
is.
about your vision, Kate. And one of the things
Yes.
you talk about in one of the articles that you have written that I loved, transforming the media landscape. One of the things you talk about is the power of story.
Mm,
I truly believe that part of what will guide us into the Aquarian age is the power of the imagination of the filmmakers, the writers, the artists who begin to vision what can be and help create new stories that will guide us into this new age and new way of being. And you're creating a platform. And part of what I love, and you and I've talked about this, is how to work with AI and the algorithms in an ethical and conscious way so that the system is supporting connection, community, equality, collaboration, rather than, as is happening so much in social media, it's fostering polarization, conflict, alienation, division. So you're really looking at how to create a way to support creators, but also have a whole different value system in
right.
how you're structuring what you're doing.
And this is why I feel like the localization of the vision is so important. The connect to know where your content is coming from. For the creator to be able to stay connected to their source of creativity, which is very much tied to place and to land, and all things arise from that. And I think one of the things that I like to mention about AI is, look, AI has been in our life. It is really not new. It's coming on in new ways, in new technologies that are becoming more mainstream. But AI is not the thing to be scared of. It is the application of AI. And the algorithm, which is kind of the shadowy side of technology and these power over, one thing that we say at LoCo Plus is it's really giving the AI is the opportunity to give the power back of the algorithm back to the people rather than the platform. And we can use AI and that technology to give power back to the creators, ownership back to the creators, and power back to the people. That is, to me, its highest expression, such that content creators are paid what they deserve to be paid. I mean, I feel like we can't have this conversation without bringing up what's happening in, the writer strike and the actor strike. And, there is a lot of movement, fast movement, which is very scary around these systems that have held, have really oppressed creatives and artists. And you now have over 300 million content creators, individuals who are choosing to express themselves creatively over the internet all around the world. And they deserve an infrastructure that will allow them to do that and to have, the experience that they wish to have. And that's the power. It's hard to wrap your head around. But I'd
That's
imagine,
extraordinary that you've said that there are 303 million content creators, but less than 10% are able to have a sustainable living from their creative work. So it feels like part of your vision is to create a way that creators can sustain themselves with doing that work and being able to be supported in a community that's collaborative and allowing them to really have the impact that they can have.
yeah, I think one of the narratives around creatives that we're completely debunking is they want to be collaborative. The narrative around competition and I've got to be the best that's really been put on them by the systems that, have wanted to create, competition in capital ways. And we see at a local level with our creators that they are so excited to be in community with other creators. And imagine the creativity that we're going to see, in that connection. That's what we're so excited about. Yeah, so this is definitely the biggest vision. that. I mean, I feel like, okay, let's just go after the media system, but I've always been drawn to it. I mean, as you mentioned, getting back to story, I think that's where my life changed, the expression of story, the freedom that came with that expression of that story, and then what I was able to do with it. And I think the future media system, the trinity of the transformation of all of this is, what is 3 through 1 and 2? And if you look at media, we've seen, high quality, very few making the media for everybody. Then we kind of went through this period of, the incentive was totally about quantity, this eruption of content creation and this evolution of YouTube and all these people having access to tools and the ability to create and to publish, which is beautiful. We should always celebrate that revolution is a revolution. But now we come to 3 and we're seeing that these platforms, aren't in favor. They create a lot of barriers for income and for discoverability for content creators. And content creators are the largest group of solopreneurs around the world. They are the fastest growing small business industry vertical around the world. And they deserve an infrastructure and a system that allows for the quantity and the quality to serve them. And audiences deserve that too. I mean, talked a lot about the creators, but audiences deserve that truth too. They deserve to know where their content is coming from and the connection to that content and to that place, whether they are rooted in that place or that place is somewhere far away. I think that's what I see as being really the beauty of and the excitement of what we can build. It's not that hard. This is really right at our fingertips. We need our allies, which is, of course, why I love sharing it with people. We need to find the people to surround this incredible opportunity and innovation. But it's not hard. All the pieces are right in front of us. And that's, I think, what gets me super excited about this time.
But it's so extraordinary, Kate, because you're bringing the power back to the creators, back to the people, back to, again, your theme across your life of fostering community and collaboration and the creativity that comes out of that, the expression of diversity that comes out of that, so that we really are co-creating new stories together. And what are these new paradigms that we're moving into, rather than it being controlled by big tech, big media, top-down management that's forcing a story on all of us that isn't our story and that is not in service to us or to our communities. It's in service to the greed of those who are in the top levels of management. So you're really changing the whole paradigm and fostering this sense of creative collaboration in community that is serving the people involved, serving the communities, helping us move into more equity and collaboration and compassion with each other, instead of disconnection and division and conflict with each other. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's really the cosmos that it's really hard, and but it is so aligned. It's I kind of sometimes, again, like the little giggle comes over me because I'm like, this is so aligned. Finally, hopefully this won't take 20 years, but I'm excited to see, because I also, since this isn't my first venture, I know what comes with the patience of creative wisdom. And, it's oftentimes just allowing things to happen versus resisting. But we are in a world, that, starting companies is not what it used to be, especially tech companies. There's a lot of pressure to build fast, build big, break everything down. That too is shifting. But to build, this platform and to build this company at this time is in itself in a transition, because I do like grassroots. It's how my mind thinks. but it does take resources, and capital. And I'll tell you, with the media, I think if you look at all of the people that have purchased the media, the corporate media, they're all people who've built big tech because they realize it's the center force of all the other systems. And I really am so passionate. People, the first step in waking up to what we can change, what's right at our fingertips to change is the media system. And through that, all these other systems, of course, as we know, are all interconnected. And to bring that relationship back to community and the power back to creators, I know that will accelerate everything that we're working towards right now. One of the things that we offer on our platform, we know that the medium of creative expression in its most common form today is the screen, right? It's evolved from stage to, it's had all its iterations. But one of the things that we're doing intentionally is buy tickets, helping creators make money offline to really incentivize the getting off the platform, engage in conversation, have a premiere, have a live event. And that's, they love that, to make that accessible. So I just say that as we're also trying to, kind of bring people from the screen back to live events, but you have to meet people where they're at.
Real connection and not just virtual connection.
Yes. But my thing is you got to meet people where they're at. If you want to create real change, you have to meet people where they're at. And that's been a lot of the methodology that we've brought into building LoCo Plus.
Kate, this is just so extraordinary and is so reflective of the whole Aquarian paradigm. I'm so excited about what you're doing. And before we stop for today, I'm going to include your website below, but can you say how people can be supportive of this vision and mission with what you're doing?
Yes. And I'll definitely, I think we can put links, to the video. The site, the platform is called GoLoCoPlus.com, GoLoCoPlus.com. And that's where, we've brought in our first 500 creators. It's very grassroots. But we're beginning kind of that aggregation and then building the applications, the apps, the CTV, the mobile app. But I would love it if anybody is feeling really that they want to help and that they want to connect further on it, to send me an email. And that can be on the website, but it's also kate@locoplus.network, and reach out to me. We have a portal in which people can upload their content. So we're ready to go. We call it Get on the Map. So you can upload your short film, you can upload your music video, and then it will put your profile wherever you're located. Of course, we're just, across the US. And then my personal website is kateatwood.com. So if you would like to reach out for, on any of the other matters, that's awesome. It's just been, Heather, so nice to have you receive me and this vision just without hesitation. That's when you're close to your tribe, because we just clicked, and I'm so grateful for you. You've been a part of my life longer than I think you've realized in your own form. But I'm very grateful to you and all the service that you provide so many in this healing experience. And then this platform that you've created, just allowing people to share their stories and you sharing your wisdom.
Well, thank you, Kate.
Through your content.
Thank you. And truly, one of the things you said a few minutes ago that I think is so profound is you said, it feels like this vision is in alignment, is aligned. And I feel like, that was part of what I immediately felt talking with you, is this is so in alignment with the energies of the earth and the sky and the cosmos and what we as humanity are being called into. in this evolutionary leap that we're in. And I do feel like there are those that are trying to keep us entrenched in the patterns of the past. And you have somehow sensed the currents of change as you've been across the trajectory of your life, and you've dared to stay in alignment with those energies and to have the courage to keep stepping forward in that creative way. And I really honor that and am so excited about what you're doing and with LoCo Plus, and so want to share this with the community and how we can continue to support this kind of vision, because it's as we work together in collaborative community that we can change the world.
Yeah, and it is about bringing the people around this. People, I kind of say, it's like it doesn't take a lot. It will take the concentrated energy for a certain amount of time. But this isn't like trying to put somebody on the moon. This isn't a lot. It's something that we can all enjoy building for the future and future generations, without the confines of having to even know what it exactly is. That's the fun part. When you're the creator, it's like you can, enjoy that process
Without knowing the outcome.
Yeah. So I hope people are moved by it. And I'd love to continue to bring you updates and, share how it's going. I imagine, I have a feeling that it's going to start to move really fast. We've been, building this for about 2 years, very grassroots. But people are, even in the industry, people are starting to give us a look when they hadn't in the past, because there's just so much change. And we just want to honor and trust that.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing this with us today. Thank you for the journey that you've been living across your life, and that, honoring of really that inner guidance. And thank you for continuing to keep us updated. I would love to come back and stay in conversation with you about all of this.
Yes. Soon we'll have Heather on LoCo Plus.
All right. Well, blessings to you.
It will all come full circle.
Yes, that's great. Blessings to you and blessings to all of you.